After about 30 hours, I've managed to complete a handful of side quests and beat the main story plot of Dragon Dogmas 2, which also includes its 3 alternate endings. While the game itself is not a modern day masterpiece, it also isn't the horrible game that some are making it out to be. I managed to pick this up on a recent Steam sale for a discounted price of $39.99, and perhaps this could be the reason why I enjoyed it so much. After all, my judgment was now based on a $40 game and not a $70 game had I bought it at a different time. Yes, there were times where some jankiness caused a bit of mild rage, but there were also some cool characters, side quests, and experiences out in the open world that I really enjoyed. Before I go any further, I'll take this point to state that this is not a spoiler-free video. While I will not discuss the plot or ending of the game, there may be some things in here that spoil locations, weapons, side quests, etc. If these things matter to you, this is the point where you can X out of the video and come back after you've played the game. Now that we've got that out the way, let's talk about my experience with Capcom's Dragon Dogma 2. Dragon's Dogma 2 starts out with you, the Arisen, working as a prisoner in a mine. It ends up being attacked by a mythical creature where you and a fellow inmate or slave, I'm not really sure since that's not fully explained, or maybe it was and I missed it, make your escape on the back of a griffin. The griffin ends up being shot down via an extremely large arrow and you are dropped into the open world. Dragon Dogmas 2 is a big game, like I mean very big, with a lively feeling of an open world. On your journeys, you'll run into other pawns, merchants, enemies, and NPCs that may lead to side quests. There are random live events called Cullings, where you save an NPC from being attacked by random enemies. Once you've cleared the area from any evildoers, you get gifted with random item and some money by the NPC before going back down your initial path. These things are sprinkled enough where the journey by foot doesn't seem so bad for the first few hours. And I say this because around hour 4, I really wish that there was some sort of mount to speed up the process of getting from point A to point B. Most of your traveling across the rather large open world is done on foot, a decision that developers strongly stood by when it was first found out that Dragon's Dogma 2 wouldn't have a normal fast travel option. When I say normal, I'm referring to the standard animation that you see once you stumble across a new location with a "This area unlocked" message popping up under the newly found location's name. Once done, usually there's some sort of mark you can see on the map to fast travel to that location instantly after a short loading screen. In other normal methods, there may be a checkpoint that needs to be interactive with, a train station, maybe setting up a camping site, but overall, this is normally a pretty simple and straightforward process. In Dragon Dogmas 2, the fast travel is done a bit differently. 1, you need to have interacted with a port crystal at a village or kingdom. These crystals are not conveniently placed, but rather tucked away somewhere at these locations. Once activated, you can now use a fairy stone to travel to that location or to any one of the 10, at max, portable crystals you have placed across the map. The fairy stones aren't given in abundance and seems to only be able to be purchased in limited stock by some vendors or given during side quests or can be occasionally found in a treasure chest. Outside of that option is the ox cart, which is more easily afforded by paying a small cost of a couple hundred coins. Ox carts can be found at random while working around the open world or by looking for a marker on your map while in a village that looks like an ox's head. The one catch with these is that they are one-way carts. Due to this, you can't catch a cart from the furthest northern point of the map to the southernmost tip or hop on any random cart you find out in the open world to go to any of the villages. You'll need to see if that cart is going in the direction you are headed and hop on. If not, keep trekking on foot. With all that said, yes, traveling on foot is cumbersome and annoying at times. I tried one foot journey from 2 points of the section of the map and it took me almost 12 minutes. But in all honesty, this is my fault. I didn't explore as much as I could have in the game, which didn't allow me to find too many portable crystals. I also didn't look around many of the villages because I didn't feel like the port crystals were a necessity. I didn't need to make fast traveling a thing that I had in every location. I had a love-hate relationship with travel in the game. Some of the travel to the next mission point on foot took a long time, but it was enjoyable, at the very least manageable most of the time. There were times I stumbled into a cave that provided a shortcut later in the game, or maybe ran into a huge cyclops that I decided to stay and battle for the next 5 minutes by climbing its back and landing a final blow on its head before I leaped off to safety when it stumbled to its death. Would fast travel or a mount be greatly appreciated if it was here? Yes, 100%. But did it make the game worse because it wasn't? No. Definitely not. Maybe that speaks more to me wanting something I expect because all the other games did it versus it being such a key feature that should be there. Now this leads me to the leveling up system in combat. Two systems that normally have a standard implementation that I was surprised to not find in Dragon Dogma 2. I think at this point it may be safe to assume that I've never played the original, and yes, you are correct in that assumption. This year may have been the year of RPGs for me. I think I may have fallen in love with them in a way that I've never have before. Playing Elden Ring DLC, Lies of P, and a few other titles have made RPGs click for me in a way they never did before. I came here expecting a system where I would have to meticulously add each skill point to vigor, strength, defense, etc., only to see that Dragon Dogma 2 chose a more streamlined time process. There are 2 leveling up systems in the game. One is for your main character and a separate one for the vocation you've chosen. The vocation is what we would normally refer to as the class of your character. Dragon Dogma 2 starts out with 4. The Archer, a long-range bow and arrow class. Fighter, a more balanced character that relies on both offense and defense during combat situations. Mage, a character that relies primarily on magic. And lastly, the class I chose, Thief, a dual blade wielding fast-paced in and out combatant. Later in the game, you unlock another 6 more vocations that allow you even more options when it comes to picking and creating a character that matches your fighting style, but I won't deep dive into their combat styles or names. Dragon Dogma 2 allows you to switch to another vocation at any time by visiting the vocation guilds in the villages. Both these are scaled up as you level up. When you level up, the game will automatically add points to your stats by placing them in strength, vigor, stamina, etc. Your vocation will level up the more you fight, unlocking more skill sets, special moves, and augments. Once unlocked, you can then purchase and equip via the vocation guild or camping site. For me, this was great. While still providing some shallow level of depth with armor and weapons, the game does do a bit of hand-holding in this aspect, as you don't need to micromanage that portion of your character and can focus a bit more on just playing and leveling up. I know some people love that, and to them this is one of the main selling points of an RPG, but I feel that Capcom did this well, and it didn't make me feel like leveling up didn't matter, but also it wasn't a thing to complete once I got enough in XP every time. Combat, on the other hand, didn't seem fully created to have a deep system at all. Most, if not all, the enemies can be beaten just by equipping higher level gear and mashing the attack button while being sure to dodge any incoming attacks. I even defeated most of the larger enemies the same way, although attacking weak areas did provide an incentive to dish out more damage. Now, this obviously has a lot to do with the thief character I chose, but still, it felt that there may not have been any more of a challenge should I have chosen another vocation. Being able to unlock many skills and equip them was cool, but after I found the 4 that I liked, I never had the urge to equip different ones. Quite honestly, I didn't until I got to the last boss. I wish there was a way to take advantage of the system. Some things that I feel could have been rather easy additions were not included at all. I would have loved to be able to imbue weapons with different elements so that I could keep the weapon that I took so long to power up and just adjust it to the area or enemy I'd be facing the most. I also wish a bit more could have been done with the armor. It didn't really matter what I equipped so long as I had a high enough strength and defense. I was good to go. One thing I did enjoy about the combat is your pawns and the way they support you. Finding a mage that focuses on healing will see you getting heal spells regularly during combat or a heal bubble placed down for the entire party to use. You may also find yourself fighting a goblin, and a mage imbues your weapons with fire, giving you an extra boost of damage and causing your hits to activate a burn effect. There have even been instances where a pawn with the fighter vocation in my part climbs up a rather large enemy right next to me to attack it from its weaker spots. Since we're discussing pawns, let's dive into that a little bit more. Pawns are beings that come from the Rift and can only be controlled by an Arisen. In Dragon Dogma 2, you will create your main pawn that will accompany you throughout the course of the game. You will once again have full control of the character creator tools, and you can choose from the same vocations you set for yourself, and just like yourself, you can change the vocation later in the game and equip your pawn with new gear and weapons. Your party will also consist of 2 more pawns that you can obtain from the Rift. This is supposed to be a realm between your world and the world of other Arisens. A system has been developed in which the other pawns in your game are either created from other players, should you choose to play online, or randomly generated ones. As mentioned above, they help in battle, make suggestions in between missions, help you hold and gather items from the world, and can be swapped out at any time during the game by visiting one of these Rift Stones. Now, I expect that this is not a surprise to any of the veteran Dragon Dogmas player, but as I stated earlier in the video, I never played it. The way pawns sometimes interact with the world and the mission you have set are pretty cool. Move about on foot around only to hear one of your borrowed pawns say, "Hey, my last master found a treasure chest around here. Would you like me to take you to it?" Only for you to confirm by hitting the go command and immediately sending the pawn towards the path of the item with you following closely behind. Pawns also interact with each other or sometimes question your decisions. There have been times when I select a new mission only for my pawn in the party to say, "Hey, I know where that is," and lead me the way to the exact point of the game that I need to go to. However, with all of the things in Dragon Dogma 2, this great system is not really fleshed out and has its bugs. I've had to deal with pawns falling to their death only for me to have to run back and revive them. Some pawns clipping into equipment I've used while attacking only to damage them. The game also speaks about pawns disobeying their Arisen by receiving some sort of illness, but I've never experienced this myself. I'm not sure if this was due to me preventing it from happening or if it was lore and not an actual mechanic in this game. Before jumping into performance, I do want to take a brief, and I mean a very brief moment to discuss the microtransactions in this game. This game does have microtransactions for certain items. It is not plastered all over the screen. Personally, I don't even remember a store being a menu option. I honestly never felt that I needed to use them or was tempted to purchase them. I visited the store once just to see what the associated costs were and never saw or thought about it again during my 30-hour playthrough. Now let's move on to performance. I played Dragon's Dogma 2 on PC. My computer has a 4070 Super, Ryzen 9 5900X, and 16 gigabytes of RAM. I played the entire game with DLSS on, set the performance mode, and frame generation turned on as well. Resolution was set to 2560 by 1440 and graphics settings were on high. I'd say 90% of the time the game played perfectly fine, and the graphics weren't affected except for a few instances where the game had a weird shadowy effect on foliage being lit by the sun, and once on an enemy in the distance that just looked distorted. I will be honest and say that the one time I turned off DLSS and frame generation, that I did notice an obvious drop in frames, and this was without an FPS counter on. The game just felt less smooth and responsive, but it was not unplayable by any means. However, with those settings on, the game ran mostly between high 80s and low 100 FPS, even during heavy combat scenarios. I also did have 2 times where the game completely froze on me with an error report. While the 2 forced quits were extremely annoying, the rest of the issues were okay to deal with. I am for one against all the software issues games have now. The game did provide a bit of mission variety with some stealth missions, chase missions, fetch quests, and your normal go here and beat this thing up. One of my favorite stealth missions involved attending a masquerade ball. To participate, I had to go to the castle grounds on a night where a ball was being held. I had to wear a specific mask that was given to me to hide my identity, and some specific clothing I had to find or purchase. I ultimately found it by going to the noble quarters and finding a few sets and chests. Once I could fully equip myself with the gifted mask and outfit, I would proceed to the castle grounds where my pawns could not follow. Into the party where I stumbled upon a well-hidden door, which led me to a separate building where I was able to peer through a hole and find the information I needed. Another stealth mission had me dressed like a knight and sneaking into a room to steal a note that was needed to help unfold part of the mystery we were attempting to solve. While these missions weren't the worst, I felt that more could have been done to fully flesh out the stealth idea instead of blend in by wearing the right stuff. I never felt like I might have gotten caught so long as I had the right stuff on. I could walk in any area, stand around, do anything as long as I didn't attack anybody, and nobody would suspect anything. Is Dragon Dogma 2 a contender for Game of the Year? No way, not even close to it. Honestly, I'd be surprised if we were nominated when you consider some of the titles that were already released this year and what's left to come. However, this does not mean that this is a bad game. I'd push to say that this is a solid game, a good game, but not a great one. For $39.99, I felt like I got my money's worth. I enjoyed the main story, enjoyed the side quests that I did complete, reloaded the last save a few times to see all 3 endings, and will probably jump back into the game to finish off some quests that I have not completed. There are a few lesser dragons that I'd like to slay, but I also realize that my opinion may have not been the same had I paid the full price of $69.99 for this game. And this leads back to an even bigger discussion. Not every game needs to be a AAA record-breaking blockbuster title. A lot of us really enjoy AA or even single-A games that come at a cheaper price, shorter playthrough, and may not be as well polished but are passion projects or cultural classics. Eva West is one of the more recent games of mine that falls under this category. Maybe if we as consumers can go back to playing games just for fun, and devs can go back to creating games without the pressure of corporations trying to maximize profit and pushing to copy the last best-selling title, we can get something like a Dragon's Dogma 2 that isn't quite there, but can steadily build on what they've created or grow into the next best-selling game. But when both consumers and corporations expect every game to be a 10 out of 10, we get games like this that get a bad rep as an awful, horrible game, but in reality, they are just good games. Not great, not horrible, but in the middle, and that's fine.